Welcome to the Weekly Wars podcast, where two guys who talk about Star Wars way too much have decided to record it and let you listen. Be sure to check every Wednesday to get the latest episode. In Star Wars news this last week, EA released the timeline and details about the future of Battlefront, including Hoth-specific outfits for Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. The Force Awakens is reaching the end of its run in China, and while it has a decent $115.8 million haul, it's still falling short of analyst predictions. I guess they'll have to settle for the $1.95 billion they've made overall. And now to Zach and Rhett.
Hey everyone, and welcome to our first Weekly Wars podcast. I'm Zachary Marsh.
And I'm Rhett Christensen.
We decided to make this podcast because we wanted to talk about all things Star Wars. And no topic is off topic as long as it's something to do with Star Wars.
We just needed a place to kind of throw our ideas out there, however off base or idiotic that they may be.
Or awesome.
But I find that far less likely.
Let's focus on the awesome.
Okay, my bad.
So the first thing we wanted to talk about in our first podcast is why Kylo Ren is awesome. And Rhett loves Kylo Ren way more than I do. So I'll let him explain why he wants to talk about this.
Well, I do find it interesting because not a lot of people seem to have an issue with Kylo Ren. And in fact, based on the obvious reactions of the public at large, The Force Awakens and Kylo Ren are both fairly well received. But there is that very vocal minority out there that likes to point out everything that they find annoying, seems to be the most common adjective, which is also something I find annoying because that is just an opinion at that point.
Right. Well, most of the complaints we've heard about the movie are pretty subjective, at least the valid complaints. I think there's a few objective valid complaints about the movie, but it's so much fun, most of it doesn't matter. But with Kylo Ren, a lot of it is very subjective.
Right. And obviously there's one of the biggest issues people point out is the end fight scene. People seem very upset that someone trained as a Jedi who fell to the dark side has actually had lightsaber combat training would lose to someone like Finn and Rey. And there is plenty of material out there now, whether Reddit posts or Imgur or Imgur, or, however you say internet words.
However you say it.
And also YouTube videos. Plenty of people have addressed this issue of why he lost. But I just think that's always worth going over again. Because, first of all, he didn't lose up until the last little bit. He completely wrecked Finn right off the bat.
Well, and that's at the end of the movie. Let's go to the beginning of the movie. He has wrecked the entire film.
He literally spends the whole time making people run in fear from him.
Right? Or he captures everyone he wants to capture. He gets the information he wants. He's busy doing something else, so he leaves it to Hux. And Hux is not able to accomplish what Kylo Ren has left him to do.
Yeah. Kylo is able to complete the objectives he set out to, which is from a writing standpoint, also makes him a fantastic villain because he has his objectives. He sets out to accomplish them, and he does accomplish them 90% of the time throughout the film.
And not only on a big scale like the big tasks he has, but personally, he wants to turn to the dark side. He knows what he has to do to get there, and he accomplishes it. How many villains actually accomplish their goals in movies?
Right, and it's far too often that you just have a villain that's just there to be a villain, to not actually provide a counterpoint, but just to be an obstacle. Not, I guess that would be the best way to put it. Not a counterpoint, he's just an obstacle. Or
right.
They're just an obstacle. But in this, he actually provides a balance between Rey and Finn and all the resistance. He is on the opposite end and gives juxtaposition to their actions and not just in the objectives, but just in his personal goals. He, like you said, he is actively trying to become stronger in the dark side, and he does everything he can to do that, despite feeling the pull of the light. But yeah, he absolutely is.
Right. Well, he has a character arc within the film, and it's clear that they're setting up for a long-term arc because Snoke says, Hux, go grab him, bring him back so that we can finish his training, right?
Yeah.
So not only does he have an arc within the film, but he has an arc throughout at least episode 8, and who knows what their plans are through episode 9.
Right. Which is, to me, one of the more interesting aspects to think about with the future films is how closely are they going to mirror Vader's story, or how much are they going to depart? In the end, he can either be another Vader, which in itself would be okay.
I can't forgive him for killing Han Solo, but I guess you can, and there's other people who can, but I personally cannot forgive that, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens, because, on a scale of morality, killing Han Solo is personally more affecting to the audience, but Vader did murder dozens, if not hundreds of children. So,
yeah.
And he was redeemed in the end, although...
Well,
it's up for debate.
Well, plus there's the theory that Snoke is actually Anakin and he didn't really get redeemed or something like that. I don't know. All those theories. But this actually does bring up a pretty good point that Darth Vader's return to the light side is actually like the flip of a switch.
Right.
You don't really see that arc through 4, 5, and 6. Although I love the crap out of those movies.
Oh, yeah.
You don't really see him transition. It's just all of a sudden at the end of the Return of the Jedi, he's just like, oh, yeah, I'll be a good guy now, I guess. I'm watching my son get electrocuted, so whatever, I'll turn back to the light side.
Right. Well, and even in Empire Strikes Back, he has the moment where he wishes to reconcile, but that's not reconciliation for the sake of becoming a good guy. That's literally just, hey, me and you could
rule the galaxy.
We could rock this.
Right.
So you should join me. It's not any attempt to become what he was when he was a good guy. It's just an attempt to make his son a bad guy so that they can overthrow the Emperor, because the Emperor's your dick.
So right off the bat, in the first episode that we see Kylo Ren, we actually see his struggle. So if they set up a redemption, at least we've been seeing that there's a struggle, right?
Right. He's always felt the pull of the light. Even when he kills Han, he struggles with it, and he voices his concern, saying he doesn't think he has the strength to do what is necessary.
And then afterwards, he's just sitting there, like, shocked at his own actions. And Chewbacca has the time to take a clean shot and totally shoot him.
Yeah, so they definitely are setting up, again, the juxtaposition to Rey. Rey will have her arc as she becomes a Jedi, and Ren will have his arc as he becomes, perhaps not a Sith, but a user of the dark side.
Yeah, dark force user, whatever they decide to do with him.
Which I do think there is a possibility that completing his training might include some Sith teachings. But I also really like the idea of Snoke being above or beyond Jedi and Sith. He is
maybe he
something
sees the
entirely.
faults of both. I mean...
Well,
but that's another podcast.
Totally different topic. Anyways, so Kylo Ren has a story arc, which sets him, even though he is an antagonist, it gives him depth of character.
Well, and then, he has a story arc. He wins almost all of his battles. And let's talk about him winning a fight against Finn. So, like, if you've read Before the Awakening, you find out that Finn was like top of his class.
Right.
And and they go through all of his melee training. And so in the movie, we don't see this. What we do see is that stormtroopers do have melee training because he fights nines.
FN 2199.
Yeah, FN 2199, who screams traitor, who everyone was saying was
the new Boba Fett, according to the internet. He has received
And what was
quite
the
a
name they
lot.
came up with for him? T8R8 or something like that?
TR8R.
TR8R.
Yep.
Traitor. That's right. But we, of course, had read before The Awakening, so we were all like, oh, that's probably Nines. And we were right. Star Wars confirmed that.
Right.
But he beats Nines in the book in regular melee combat.
Right.
And then allows the next guy to beat him. Finn allows the next guy to beat him because he doesn't want him to get pummeled or get in more trouble or whatever, because they have a guy that's sort of a...
he thinks about it, but then he remembers that if he lets
That's right.
Slip, I think Slip was what
Slip,
it was
that's
called.
his name.
If he lets Slip win, then Slip would have to stay in the ring because they're doing I don't know what other
that's
people
right.
call it.
And he was worried about Slip continuing and getting further injured because Slip already seemed to have a concussion or some kind of damage.
Yeah, he'd already taken a severe knock on the head.
So not only is Finn like the best in his class in melee combat, but he also is he's conscious of the people around him and the condition they're in, which is a significant advantage.
Awareness.
Yes, situational awareness is a very big advantage, especially in melee combat.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fact that he had melee training, and to be fair, not as much melee training as others, or even as much as Kylo Ren might have had, having a decent amount of melee training will set you far and above most everyone else. If you as discussed elsewhere on the internet, specifically Matt Easton's Scala Gladiatoria YouTube channel, he discusses how having a little bit of training with melee weapons complements itself when transitioning to other melee weapons. And if you are competent enough martially, that transition may take a second to get used to, but in the end, as long as you have situational awareness and martial capability, you'll be able to adapt quickly enough, which he does until, as the book points out, it mentions in the novelization of The Force Awakens, it mentions that Kylo at first didn't necessarily take Finn seriously, and once he became injured, realized, okay, I need to finish this.
And he does.
And he does immediately. And he takes him out of the fight within a matter of moments.
And then he goes into the fight with Rey, which is one of my favorite moments in the movie when she force pulls the lightsaber, and I was really excited for that.
It was a beautiful transition.
It was amazing. But then she is fighting defensively, and he's hunting her down, but he doesn't want to kill her. That's my thing. Like, he's chasing her down and doing everything to keep her knowing that she's at a disadvantage.
Right. And in almost every situation of combat, whether ranged or hand-to-hand, trying to fight someone just to disable them is significantly more difficult than trying to just kill them.
Oh,
yeah. It's fairly easy when shooting or when swinging a weapon to just aim for vital parts of the body because they're generally larger. But if you're aiming for disabling, then you aren't going to be able to utilize as many techniques.
And that's where you get those wide swings that he's been doing, or he does throughout the fight.
Right. And also he's wielding his exponentially more powerful lightsaber with one hand while he got shot in the side from the freaking hand cannon of a bowcaster.
And which is another thing. He was fighting while injured and still had complete control of all the fighting situations until, he got nicked.
But that can happen to anyone.
Oh, yeah.
Any master swordsman can be
nicked
by even a completely untrained person, because someone who's flailing around is going to be less predictable, you could say. So it's pretty easy to get hit by someone like that, even if you are totally competent. So he got nicked.
And then we find out why he's chasing her down. Because he says, you could use a teacher. I want to teach you the Force.
Right. He recognizes her power and realizes, like Vader did with Luke, that together they'd be able to accomplish much, much more.
Oh, yeah.
Than separate.
And then he made a huge mistake in saying that, because then she's like, oh, the Force. And then she focuses, and as we've seen throughout the movie, she's like one of the most naturally powerful Force users ever.
Right.
And so she's able to come back and beat him at that point.
Right.
Like, she's just a natural, so.
But the Force is her ally at that point, and a powerful ally it is.
It is. Plus years of melee combat surviving on Jakku.
Right. Absolutely not something she probably even needs to think about until that fight. She proves herself quite competent against those the employees of Unkar Plutt on Jakku. So shouldn't even be an issue.
Him losing was a compilation of a lot of things, and even with that, he's still pretty fantastic.
Oh, yeah. And I think that it only points to how awesome he will be when he has that full strength and he's hunting down Rey and Luke. That is going to be, even for Luke, I think that's going to be a pretty big threat.
Challenge. Yeah, totally. So the last thing I want to talk about, this is a cool visual cue, and we can learn a little bit more about it from the visual dictionary, is Kylo Ren's lightsaber. So we learn from the visual dictionary that his lightsaber, the crystal he has, is a kyber crystal, and it's actually a cracked kyber crystal.
So he had to incorporate an ancient design from Malachor, which is interesting. That's one of those expanded universe planets that's actually made its way, because elsewhere it seems like they're doing their best just to come up with completely new material. But according to the visual dictionary, Malachor was from other sources, and they are trying to incorporate that into the new canon. But using that ancient design of the cross-bladed, he figures out a way to vent the excess uncontained power of the kyber crystal.
Right, and that's where you get the crossguard looking, I don't know, what do you call it?
The exhaust.
Exhaust,
the
yeah, there you go, the vents. But what's so cool about that is that the kyber crystal is cracked, causing that. So not only do you have him using this more ancient technology, which ties in with him wanting to study the things of the past, wanting to follow the ways of his grandfather. There's also some theories that he's studied other Sith histories and things like that. But the cracked lightsaber also is a symbol of him as a character, right? He's a little unstable, and if anyone wants to argue with us on that, you're wrong. And if you've seen the movie, it's pretty obvious that he's a little unstable.
His tempered tantrums, which are still some of my favorite moments, because I think to a certain extent it's almost him forcing himself to anger so that he can give in to the dark side more. He knows that by allowing himself to express his rage, by destroying the console and destroying the interrogation room, that he's just feeding the flame, feeding
he feeds
his dark
off
side.
of it, feeds his dark side.
And also on that quick tangent, when he's in the fight and he has that moment of pounding the wound of the bowcaster, I think that's indicative of that as well, that he's trying to
use the pain and the anger and
exactly
to fuel his power and his dark side.
Fuel,
sorry. I said that word weird. But I think, at first I didn't like the crossguard lightsaber. I thought it was dumb, and I thought it was JJ just trying to be different. But when it's used as a reflection of his character, that's awesome. That's what the lightsaber should be.
And there's totally context for it too. I mean, and it's not something that they address in the movie. It's not something that needs to be addressed in the movie for the plot, but there is character to it. It's a signature look. It adds to his character, and it's symbolic as well.
That's just great.
Right.
I mean, what more could you ask out of a weapon?
Yeah. That's everything you need right there.
And one cool thing that it also brings just visually is when he clashes with other lightsabers. You were mentioning this the other day. It causes, and we don't know if this is just new to the movies or if it's because of his unstable lightsaber, but it causes this huge clash of sparks.
Right.
And light.
I think most of the saber binds that they've had in all of the films have had when the lightsabers are together, there's a little bit more of a glow where they meet.
And then there's the sound, the lock sound.
Yeah, but with this, it's like the glow was larger. The sparks are just flying everywhere. Every time they hit, there's just a shower of sparks, which visually made them much more interesting. So to a certain extent, I think it is them trying to add more to the fight without going back to the prequel style of lightsaber combat, which is a good thing. But still allowing some visual cues to let you know that this is a new age of Star Wars movies.
We're doing something new.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that just goes into the unstable lightsaber blade too. It has so much excess energy, and it's not the clean, pristine lines of the old lightsabers. So it's all that arcing power is causing more sparks and things like that.
Well, and how about when he uses the exhaust to burn Finn?
That is absolutely one of my favorites, because you always have these saber locks and they're standing there facing each other. And I know that's a movie trope, and that's fine for a movie trope, but no one ever does anything. And this time he actually has something, you know? I mean, it's a lot slower than it might be in terms of actual sword fighting combat, but they have the play, you know, he's pushing in so that he can wound him to take advantage, which he totally does. He does that right before he turns him around and splits him open.
Yeah, so. Takes him right out.
So that is
Rhett gave a pause of that was amazing. Sorry you couldn't see it.
That is definitely one of my favorite moments, and I think that it would have been depressing if they hadn't included that, but they did, so I'm okay. I'm happy now.
So if you had to pick someone to win a fight between Darth Vader and Kylo Ren, who would you pick?
That's terrible. Don't do that.
That's why I did it to you.
If you're talking about Darth Vader, you know, in the era of A New Hope and Empire, I think Darth Vader would win hands down, just because he is so much more like he's so enveloped in the dark side at that point. But it's possible that Kylo in the future movies will reach that point as well.
Yeah, I'm going to reserve judgment until we see what happens in Episode 8.
Yeah, I mean,
for now, I would have to pick Darth Vader.
Yeah, for now, definitely Darth Vader. But there is several more years to find out which one it will be. And maybe when they release a Kylo Ren comic book, then we can compare Kylo Ren to Darth Vader a little bit more, which I hope they do at some point. That's my great desire.
Oh, yeah. That's what we all want to see. So that's all of our reasons that, well, maybe not all of the reasons, but the reasons we came up with as to why Kylo Ren is awesome. And I actually was not as big of a fan at first either. I didn't like his lightsaber. I didn't know what they were doing with the character, but by the end of the movie, I was turned over and convinced. Rhett knew from the beginning.
Well, not from the very beginning. I think there was a time there when I was afraid that he might not be as menacing as I hoped, because we have talked about before, once he takes his mask off,
I still say this. He looks like kind of a wiener.
Yeah, he looks like a guy, not like anything terrifying. He's just a dude. But to me, that is the, I don't know what you call it, the mirror for the audience, so that they can recognize that this is a normal guy. He's not anything crazy. He hasn't, up to that point, he hasn't had any significant physical trauma, which in movies, physical trauma indicates emotional trauma as well. Scars are there to show people who are bad. Anakin has the scar over his eye during the Revenge of the Sith to show his fall to the dark side. at that point, he doesn't have any external physical trauma to represent why he might be evil. So he's just a normal guy, and he's doing these evil things, and you want to know why.
And he's trying to be evil, which is very interesting.
Right.
He's, how many do you hear about trying to be evil?
Yeah, and it's not even so much with Anakin, the sense of doing what's right. I'm sure there is that as well. I think in the novelization they mentioned that he wants to complete the mandate of the First Empire by bringing order to the galaxy. So I think to a certain extent there's that, and that's why he's trying to emulate Vader. But he knows that the only way he can do that is through the dark side. So it's not a slow decline over decades. He's like, nope, I'm going to choose this. I'm going to go dark side because that's what's going to give me the power to accomplish these goals.
Awesome. Well, next week we're planning to talk about the 5 most important moments in the Force Awakens novelization, or just 5 really cool moments from the novelization. In case you haven't read it,
more cool.
Yeah,
than important.
Than important. These are moments that you should hear about. It's pretty fun. So stay tuned. This is Zach Marsh, and
this is Rhett Christensen.
And we'll talk to you next week. Be sure to post on our Facebook page or on the YouTube channel. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear what you want us to talk about. Give us a holler.
And may the Force be ever in your favor.